The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by Northwestern. Ben, remember, when I point to you, you sing the song of the day, okay?
Oh, man. I'm overwhelmed. I got to remember all that?
How's it going, everybody? Your Ben Joravsky Show for Thursday, December 12th, is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring our program. First up, it's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. They sponsor this program as well. The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, sponsor this program. And today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor.
Whole lot of love. Whole lot of love. I'm going to do the little screechy thing. Remember that part of A Whole Lot of Love where they like do the weird stuff?
And there's no show quite like this one. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Thursday, December 12th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, in these times, writer Miles Kampf-Lassin is back to talk progressive politics, and it's the return of Chicago political consultant. Ben calls him PC, and that doesn't stand for political consultant. It's Peter Cunningham. And now your host. That guy. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Head in the Gutter Thursday. And here's why. Woke up this morning bright and early at 9. Yeah, I was up and at 'em early, D.
Nice.
First thing I did, as I always do, when I wake up, I yawn, I stretch, and then I click on my phone, and what did I discover? I discovered the following headline in an email from the Tea Party. Yeah, D, I get Tea Party updates all the time.
Still getting those T-mails.
Do not know why or how I got on the Tea Party mailing list, but I get regular updates like this, and I will now read to you the headline that I discovered at 9 in the morning when I woke. God, was that early? Anyway, here we go. Trashy Hunter Biden won't pay child support, but his baby mama thinks the world should know this about his bank account. How about that for a headline to wake up with, D, huh? Trashy Hunter Biden won't pay child support, but his baby mama thinks the world should know this about his bank account.
That's the headline?
That was the headline in the Tea Party.
That's a long headline.
That's a light Tea Party. But all they needed was trashy Hunter Biden won't pay child support and baby mama. That's all you needed. Child support, baby mama. All right, now, folks, just so you know, Some of you out there who are not completely and utterly and totally obsessed with politics the way I am. Hunter Biden is the son of Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the leading candidate right now in the polls anyway, for the Democratic nomination to run against Donald John Trump. Donald John Trump is utterly obsessed with Joe Biden. As we know, he was trying to extort the Ukraine president into announcing that he was doing an investigation of Hunter Biden. I don't really know that much about Hunter Biden. It's not one of my obsessions. Sons of prominent politicians, daughters of prominent politicians. I generally work from the rules, sort of that, you know what? That's their life. They're not public figures. Let them do their thing. I talk about what the parents do. On the other hand, Hunter Biden's a grown man. Hunter Biden was working as a consultant. He was on the board to Ukraine oil company, energy company. He is a public person in his own right. So, it is warranted, in my humble opinion. Okay, he may be trading on his daddy's influence. I know I'm going to get kicked out of all parties filled with my beloved Democrats are going to be mad at me. But
I'll go lock the door.
You lock the door. My friends of the Democratic persuasion are going to be mad at me, but I believe it's a legitimate issue, all right? Now, here I am confronted with this headline that told me something I never knew about Hunter Biden, that he's in a child support battle and he has a quote-unquote baby mama. Baby mama is a derogatory way to talk about the mother of his child. So apparently the Tea Party is not exactly the most dignified purveyor of news, but that's Donald Trump's party. What do I expect from it? Anyway, I had a choice, D. I had a choice when I saw that email. I could have just moved on to the next headline, which was something, I think it was the Chicago Tribune headlines. Could have been something from the Chicago Tribune, I could have moved on, or I could have clicked. Not proud of what I did, D.
Oh, no.
I'm a little ashamed to admit what I did. Please do not get this around. Everybody out there listening, don't tell anybody what I did. I clicked on it. Oh, yeah. I clicked on it. I became clickbait for the Tea Party. I just drove up the numbers by one, and I'm probably going to get a MAGA hat in the mail as a result. You have won this MAGA hat for clicking on the thing. And one thing led to another, and I wound up reading accounts of Hunter Biden's, how do I put this, very complicated love life. And this dude's got some issues. Can I just throw that out there, D? He was married for many years. He had 3 children with his wife. He got divorced from his wife, began dating the widow of his brother. His brother died of cancer, and then he began dating his brother's ex-wife. While he was dating the ex-wife, he impregnated his girlfriend. Denied that he did it. She forced him to take a paternity test. The test showed that he was indeed the father. Now he's locked into a very contentious child support battle with the mother of his child. And the reason why this is quote unquote news is because the lawyer for the woman whose child he had is trying to force Hunter Biden to reveal all income he's received from his work as a consultant to the Ukrainian energy company and any work he's done anywhere. Now, there's ostensibly a legitimate reason for doing that. The legitimate reason to see how much he's worth, so then they could ascertain how much she could legitimately ask. That would be the quote-unquote legitimate legal reason for it. The other reason is not so legitimate. It's hardball politics in a contentious child support case, folks. You're threatening him essentially to force him to pay more in child support by saying they're going to force him to reveal things that he or his father don't want to reveal. And guess who's watching us every step of the way? Donald John Trump and the Tea Party. Every day that this case goes on, every day that there's new revelations about Hunter Biden and his very contentious child support case, that will be grist for the mill. And you can expect more emails from the Tea Party with those salacious headlines about baby mamas and child support and trashy Hunter Thompson. They've already given him a nickname, Hunter Thompson. That's the second time I've done that. Hunter Biden. I love Hunter Thompson, by the way. Hunter Biden. I did that when I was talking to Miles. Like, we're going to talk about Hunter Thompson today. And by the way, I'm pretty much the only guy who knows this story on the left. You know why, D? I'm the only one on the left who reads the Tea Party emails. How about that?
Oh, lucky you.
The other thing I really know a lot of is about the Horowitz report. I can't find anybody willing to talk about that. You know, they're going to kick me out of the lefty because I'm into stuff that, like, you know what I mean? It's like, Ben, don't talk about Hunter Biden's problems. Folks, I got news for you. Yes, it's sleazy. Yes, I got my head in the gutter. Yes, it has no relevancy whatsoever to the all-important issues of the day. Yes, we should not judge Uncle Joe Biden by whatever his son is up to. Yes, history is filled with prominent politicians who had ne'er-do-wells for sons and daughters and brothers. I remember Bill Clinton's brother, Roger Clinton. I remember Billy Carter, Jimmy Carter's ne'er-do-well younger brother. Remember him, D? Oh, you weren't even born yet.
Of course.
He had his own beer, Billy beer or something like that.
Let's hear your Roger Clinton impression. You do a good Bill Clinton. How's your Roger Clinton?
Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Okay.
I have no idea what Roger Clinton said. Dennis, Bill Clinton here. You're a good guy. Come on over. Let's have a drink.
Now do Roger again.
Hi, everybody. That's my Roger. Anyway, so I know there's a long history of prominent politicians and presidents who have ne'er-do-wells for relatives and it really does not relate to their life. But folks, I got news for you. These are new times we live in, and the Republicans are determined to take anything they can that will divert attention from Donald Trump's sleaziness. They're going to use any excuse they could find to undercut the Democrats when the Democrats point out how sleazy a president we have elected. They're going to say, well, Democrats, you're not so high and mighty. What about Joe Biden's son? So, folks, you may want to ignore it. You may want to say, oh, it's not worthy of your attention. You may want to say, Ben, get your head out of the gutter. But we're heading for a fierce fight, and you're going to hear a lot about it in the days to come. We got a great show today, everybody. Miles Kampf-Lassin will be here from In These Times. He said he's ready to talk about Hunter Biden. How about that, D? And we're going to do plenty of political noise. We're going to talk some Bernie stuff. I got a great text this morning from Heidi Henry, our good friend, the Heartland Mama, about yesterday's discussion on Bernie Bros and Hillary. And so we'll be talking to Miles about that, see what he has to think about that, and maybe do a little Horowitz report. Listen, folks, I know a lot of you, the Democratic persuasion, don't want to do anything to divert attention from the ongoing impeachment of Donald John Trump. And yes, it's true. John Trump should never have been allowed to be president of the United States because he didn't win the popular vote. Okay, we have this crazy electoral system. Having said that, even if he does get to allowed to be president, he should at least recognize the fact that it was a very divided country and it was not a mandate in any way for him just to shove all his crazy policies down our throats. And he has given two middle fingers up high to the Democrats in Congress. He has become an emperor president, and he deserves to be impeached. And I really think Congress has no choice but to impeach him. But I don't think we should ignore, for partisan issues, what was in the Inspector General's report, Michael Horowitz's report about the FBI and how it handles going to get subpoenas to wiretap people. I think there's some serious civil libertarian issues at stake here. Love to talk to Miles Kampf-Lassin about that and other issues today. Of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Peter P.C. Cunningham will be coming in. Now, D, just to show you how benevolent I am, I am, yes, of the lefty persuasion. I voted for Bernie in 2016. Pete is more of the Dem persuasion, okay? So he's more like, I don't know if he's literally supporting Joe Biden, but he's more of that persuasion.
Way to be benevolent.
Yeah, that's benevolent, okay? Everybody, yeah, I welcome everybody in the studio, all right? So we'll hear what PC has to say.
I know benevolence when I hear it, and that's what that is right there.
And by the way, PC is also, as you know, an accomplished rocker, and he said he's going to bring his guitar.
Uh-oh.
And you remember, he's been on the show, this is his third time. The first time he brought the guitar, sang a song. Second time he goes, Ben, I'm above the guitar. I want to be known as a thinker and a political strategist. And then I begged him, please, all right, I'll bring the guitar. So he's going to bring his guitar, sing a song or two, PC will do. So plenty of political discussion ahead. And we got a bonus, great bonus. I shouldn't be so excited because it's a bonus. But after the show, Joanna Klonsky and Lena Hampton will be in the studio. We're going to record a bonus to drop it this weekend. Talk about, it's be another creep report. Looking forward to that. So plenty of political discussion ahead of us. Before we do any of that, the young man from Alton. Yes, indeed. The man they call the doctor. With the news.
By the way, you'll be able to hear that bonus this weekend at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Ben, get your head out of the gutter.
I know. I shouldn't have read that. And then I shared it with people. I started sending people. Did you see this? About 100. Anyway, yeah. Head out of the gutter, Ben.
How's it going, everyone? Let's find out what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. First, we have to talk about what went down Wednesday. It was happening as we were doing the show live. I was trying my best to cover it, but as some of you may already know, several hats. I wear several hats on the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yes, indeed.
I was meeting our guests outside to let them in the building. But today we're going to cover it, all right? Our Illinois Governor Pritzker was alongside State Rep Kelly Cassidy and our new cannabis czar, former State Rep Toy Hutchinson. They were at a hearing at the Lexington Criminal Court building in Chicago. And Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx called for the vacation and expungement of over 1,000 low-level nonviolent convictions for possession of less than an ounce of marijuana. Here's the quote from Foxx, quote, "As a prosecutor who has previously prosecuted these cases, we must own our role in the harm we may have caused, particularly to communities of color, and we must actively work to play our part in reversing those harms." Remember, starting January 1st, 2020, recreational marijuana will be legal in the state of Illinois. Ben, you've had some interesting thoughts on all this lately, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I'm going to write about this for the Reader. I've really been thinking about this. I'm now against the legalization of marijuana. I say make it illegal, but nobody can get arrested for it. And I agree, 100% expunge all those past arrests. Isn't that weird? I don't know. I'm just a weird guy. What can I say, D? I spent the morning reading about Hunter Biden's life, and then when I told people about it, I kept calling him Hunter Thompson. I got a lot of issues, all right? But yes, those people shouldn't have been arrested in the first place. The war on drug was a colossal failure, a waste of money, a waste of lives, a waste of communities and neighborhoods. It was a disgrace. And shame, shame, shame on the Democrats for having any role in it, and triple shame for the Republicans for using it as a way to sort of like slice off downstate voters from Chicagoans. We talked about that a lot. Bruce Rauner would go downstate, talk to down, I'm against the legalization of marijuana. Like people downstate, well, I'll vote for you now. Like they're not smoking reefer downstate. What a bunch of frauds and hypocrites when it comes to marijuana. And so I applaud Kim Foxx and KC, Kelly Cassidy, and Governor Pritzker for expunging. D, I remember, I've talked about this before, when Mick Dumke and I were first writing the stories on our crusade to make marijuana legal, or to at least to stop the war on drugs, covering a case at the Cook County Criminal Courts building on 22nd in California, and just unbelievable, the ridiculous cases. They were like made-up cases against so many defendants. Each one was like, oh, we found this bag next to him. It was like they read from a script, the prosecutors and the cops, about these defendants, what they had done, and then they dressed it up like it was some horrific crime when some guy was just possessing marijuana. Then there was a grow house case that we covered, absolutely ridiculous. The judge should, in my humble opinion, should just thrown it out of the court. It was just a waste of everybody's time, and they acted as though they were reading from a script, so they were acting as though these were egregious crimes against humanity, that people would be daring to grow marijuana illegally. This is an outrage. And now, of course, it's legal. So where's the outrage? You know what I'm saying? Now, what these grow house people were doing was illegal at the time, so they treated it as though it was an atrocity against humanity. Now it's legal, and the richest, wealthiest corporations in the world are going to benefit from it. And that's my problem with the whole thing, D. It's the utter hypocrisy of it all. I know I should get over with it and just move on, but it's hard for me to do so. So I applaud them for what they did yesterday. Here, Kim Foxx, KC, Kelly Cassidy, and J.B. Pritzker. But it's going to take me a long time to get over this thing. You know, the utter bold hypocrisy of it all. And then we're acting so proud, like, yes, what a great people we are. Yeah, what about the last 40 years of wasting people's lives with this silly war on drugs? Anyway, D, I'm all fired up on this one.
By the way, weigh in, downloaders and live stream chat room. I'm trying to convince Ben once recreational marijuana becomes legal in Illinois. I'm trying to convince him to do a show where he, like, I don't know, it takes like an edible and it interviews somebody. It could be a recreational marijuana special on the Ben Joravsky Show.
So here's how the interview would go if I did that.
That'd be awesome. That'd be funny.
Man, you know that thing? We got to take a break, man. Yo, D, what's that thing called? That's actually sort of a regular show on the Ben Joravsky Show.
Exactly,
Anyway.
yeah. Just a little more tired sounding.
It was funny because today when I called Miles, see what do you want to talk about? What did I say? Miles, what's that thing I want to talk about? He's like, how do I know what you want to talk about?
Steven on the live stream weighed in. He said, can you imagine the tangents that would take place?
The problem is, I'd be like, I'd be starting a sentence, Stephen, and then I would forget where I was in the middle of the sentence. Dennis would be taking over the show. How's your latest? Be a lot of breaks on that show.
So that was yesterday's news. On to today's news. And apparently the place to be today, if you're an Illinois politician, was at the Harold Washington Library because both our Chicago mayor and Illinois governor were talking the 2020 census at the library. Did they check out any books? Mayor Lori Lightfoot, possibly. Sources in the library say that she may have checked out Bang on the Drum, the Todd Rundgren biopic. We're still waiting for...
You made that up.
Well, obviously. We're still waiting for confirmation on that. As for Governor Pritzker, are you kidding? Rent books? What is this, middle school? The bigger question is, did he try to buy that library?
I'm J.B. Pritzker, and I'm not a perfect person.
He's filthy rich, everybody.
But he doesn't buy libraries. He buys horse farms. Do you get it right, all right?
In the evening, Pritzker will be at the IUOE Local 399 in Chicago to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Jesse White tumbling team.
It's 60 years?
Yeah. You going?
No, I'm not going, but congratulations. 60 years. Wow, that's a long time. 60 years, if I do the math correct. Hold on.
Do that math.
That would be 1959, right?
I believe so.
Dang, man.
Tumbling never goes out of style.
Yeah, no.
All right, now, Ben Joravsky, something's been bugging me lately, all right? I've recently noticed something about our governor, and honestly, as a filthy poor fella from downstate Illinois, I can't help but feel a little concerned. So if you don't mind, Ben, I'd like to put on my camouflage downstate Under Armour hat.
Okay,
and,
go ahead.
And talk with the governor one-on-one for a moment. Is that okay?
Right. Go ahead, yeah.
Very nice of you. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Governor Pritzker, how's it going? It's me, Dennis. No, I'm not a doctor. Now, JB, every Tuesday through Friday, we mention what's on your daily schedule. It's great podcast content. Thank you for going out and doing things, unlike the last governor. But I've noticed that damn near every time we've read these, in the last few months, really, dude, you're in Chicago. Yeah, you're always downtown, going to galas and big fancy buildings, giving fancy speeches and eating fancy dinners. It's tough love time, Governor, all right? Listen. I think you're doing a great job, and I get it. You're a cultured, well-to-do human being. You like the city. But, sir, you did not sign up to be the mayor of Chicago, all right? She did.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
So while you're hanging in Chicago all the time, cramping the mayor's style, come on. What's going on here? You're the Illinois governor, bro. And frankly, I'm worried, Ben.
It's Governor Bro.
Governor Bro? I'm worried, Governor Bro. That with all this time you're spending in Chicago, I don't know, maybe you're losing touch with everyone else in the state who voted for you. Dude, I've lived in the city damn near a decade. I still don't know what a gala is, all right? I think it involves paintings. My point is, there's not a lot of galas happening anywhere else but Chicago. Pritzker, you got to get on that Amtrak, buddy. Head down 55. Start hanging with the people that elected you.
Yeah.
You have a literal mansion in Springfield. I imagine that place has cobwebs all over it. Are you ever there anymore? How about you stay there for a month or two? Give us a couple of press conferences in that infamous Blue Room. Remember the Blue Room,
Yeah.
Ben? We don't hear about the Blue Room anymore.
Steve Brown. Remember we interviewed Steve Brown about wasn't it Steve Brown we interviewed about Michael Madigan's press secretary? He was explaining
man.
the Blue Room. What is that's where you gather for the press conferences.
You know what? We haven't seen one in so long, I forgot what it is. Pritzker, you love hotels and signing legislation. I know it's not the fanciest building, but how about a bill signing at the Super 8 in Staunton, huh?
Okay. Staunton.
Yeah,
Wow.
Staunton, Illinois.
Have you ever been to Staunton?
Yeah, we used to play Staunton in high school, all right?
I've been to Staunton many times.
A fancy dinner and meet and greet at the Joliet Red Lobster? Ben Joravsky, am I crazy? Shouldn't the governor of Illinois be spending more time in the rest of the state, not just only Chicago?
You may be crazy, but you're right on this point.
Okay.
And by the way, the views and opinions of Dr. D are not necessarily those of the Ben Joravsky Show. No, Dr. D is speaking from his heart because he was born and raised in downstate Alton. He's a downstater, and you should hear him, by the way, folks, when he's not on the mic, what he has to say about Chicago versus downstate.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
No,
my
it's
God.
not. I don't do that.
Oh, and but we have this long-going debate. There's like a lot of differences between downstate and upstate or whatever we are. For instance, I'll just throw out one raging debate between Dennis and myself. Dennis, as a lifelong downstater, insists that people in the greater St. Louis area, including on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River, prefer Jimmy Buffett to Bruce Springsteen.
Absolutely.
I just think Dennis prefers Jimmy Buffett to Bruce Springsteen.
Nope.
And that, in fact, if we did a poll of people in the downstate area around Alton, just East St. Louis, et cetera, and so forth, more people would prefer Bruce Springsteen to Jimmy Buffett than the other way around. That's a raging debate. I think Governor Pritzker ought to weigh in on that one. He would be saying, I actually like the Eagles.
Oh, yeah. No, he's a Springsteen guy.
So, but I do think that Dennis is correct. I think the governor should spend more time downstate. It might come in helpful with the fair tax initiative. The governor wants to convince absolutely everybody in the state of Illinois that he's looking out for their best interests. And the fair tax would help people downstate as much as it would help people upstate because it's a progressive legislation. As such, it would have a great impact on people who don't make a lot of money living downstate, just as it would have a great impact, positive impact on people who don't make a lot of money living upstate, because it would force the wealthiest people to pay a greater portion of their income for taxes for the obligation to pay for the obligations that we have. So there you go. I just gave you a reason other than, just PR why Governor Pritzker should spend more time downstate. So D, why don't you give the governor some advice? Like if he wants to have a nice lunch downstate, if he wants to have a nice night out downstate, where should he go?
Oh, I don't want to go down there. I left downstate to come up here. What are you talking about?
Do as I say, not as I do.
I'm not the governor, all right? I can leave.
Is there a Red Lobster in Alton?
Absolutely. Alton, Illinois, Red Lobster.
All right, let's go to that
Had
place.
several first dates at that Red Lobster.
Okay.
All right. All right. And also, too, like I said earlier, she's not going to say it, so I'll say it, all right? She's kind of cramping Mayor Lightfoot. Pritzker's kind of cramping Lightfoot's style, like this thing at the library. Lightfoot's got it covered. Go.
I think Lori Lightfoot likes hanging around with J.B. Pritzker, even though he's not a perfect person.
All right. Well, thanks for letting me get that off my chest. We'll end up with some actual news here. This is about an issue that I know gets our host, Ben Joravsky, fired up. Property taxes. Mm-hmm. Earlier in the week, we talked about Mayor Lightfoot's next big plan, build Chicago's economy in the next 10 years by increasing the city's population. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times, Fran Spielman and Rachel Hinton. Mayor Lori Lightfoot joined forces with Cook County Assessor Fritz Kagi on Wednesday and flatly denied that the assessor's efforts to fix Cook County's, quote, broken property tax assessment system would scare off the development needed to reverse Chicago's population losses. Let's see here. We have a quote from Mayor Lightfoot. Mayor Lightfoot said, quote, "Nobody is trying to shock the system. Nobody is looking to scare away investment from Chicago. We all want to see our residential, commercial, and industrial real estate markets thrive. Our success as a city is inextricably tied to the growth, and growth needs development to be real. That's unimpeachable," Lightfoot said. Addressing movers and shakers at the Cook County Assessor's Market Analyst Day in the South Loop, Lightfoot said she recognizes that the change isn't easy, but argued that the change has to come because property owners and investors deserve to know if they're being treated fairly and uniformly. There needs to be a focus on predictability and stability. I know that predictability is important, but predictability cannot be about enshrining the status quo, Lightfoot said. Kagi campaigned on reforming the way the offices does business, in part because of studies that found that wealth was being transferred from low-income homeowners to their higher-income counterparts.
We should definitely bring Jason Grotto back to take the deep dive on this. He is the biggest property tax nerd I know, but he has a good way of explaining the complicated in ways that everybody can understand. So remind me to bring Jason Grotto back from ProPublica, ace investigative reporter, talk about property taxes. The reality is this, folks. I've said this many times. I'll say it again. It bears repeating. Our property tax system is very unfair for many reasons. But at the top of the list, there's an appeal process. If you don't appeal your property taxes, you're at a disadvantage to everybody else who does appeal. And I think there's a large segment of people in the city of Chicago, I'm just going to stick with Chicago right now, and also actually the suburbs as well, who do not understand the process. It's like I always say, every system has a system, and if you know how the system works, you can work the system. So many people, if you do not know about the appeal process, you do not appeal your taxes will be whatever the county says they should be. Your assessment of your of your taxable property will be whatever the county says. If you appeal, you have a chance to lower it. If you lower the assessable value of your property, then you pay less in taxes. Somebody else pays more. Right there, it's unfair. If you have an appeal process that only a few people know about, or relative few people know about, and the great majority do not understand it, do not know how it's played, then that's a disadvantage right there. So listen, we have to figure out a way to move away from the property tax as the sole funder, or the primary funder of our public schools. That is so obvious. It's been obvious for as long as I've been in the city of Chicago. And yet we won't do that. It bakes in inequities and unfairness so that like towns like Winnetka and Wilmette have a leg up over the city of Chicago because they have more property, relatively speaking, to tax. Wealthier people can afford to pay the property taxes. Therefore, their schools have more money for all kinds of fringe benefits that we don't have in the city of Chicago. And then on top of that, people have disposable income. They could dip in their wallets and pay for other programs to sort of supplement what their property tax pay for the schools. So it's unfair. It's inequitable. It's been this way forever. I don't see it changing anytime soon, D. The first step is that fair tax that I talked about. But that even there, even there, that's going to be a very difficult problem. We're going to talk about that with Peter Cunningham later on today, the fair tax. It's going to be very difficult for Pritzker to win that battle, in my humble opinion, because you're going to need 60% to implement the fair tax. So, yes, the property tax is a huge reason why Chicago is expensive. Yes, rising property tax is a reason why gentrifying neighborhoods are forcing out lower income people. Yes, rising property taxes are the reason why we should have been much more vigilant before we allowed the city council to approve those two enormous TIF deals, 78 and Lincoln Yards. Yes, those two TIF deals will freeze property taxes in the area, the amount that the taxing bodies can tax, forcing every other property, everybody else's property taxes to go up more. Yes, they keep you ignorant about that. They don't even tell you the benefits of that. So, yes, when Lori Lightfoot and J.B. Pritzker get together to talk about property taxes with Fritz Kagi, they're not telling you the whole truth. Yes, you're suckers and saps, people in the city of Chicago. Anyway, running out of yeses there.
You're on a yes rant here. You like Pete Buttigieg?
Yes. No.
Man.
By the way, can I just give another shout out to Lori Lightfoot for grilling Pete Buttigieg?
Okay.
Joanna Klonsky said she promises she's going to send me the full interview. So I'm going to have a field day playing that through that one. Maybe write a reader column about it. I've been really giving Lori Lightfoot a hard time about that teachers strike and how she dealt with the teachers and not in the budget, not spending more money to reopen the mental health clinics. But got to give her a shout out for holding. She really went after old Pete Buttigieg at that, what was it? It was some kind of assembly in Iowa. I don't know what it was anyway. So
Presidential Q&A forum in Iowa.
Wow, was that? How did you know that?
Well, we do this every day, Ben.
Yes, you knew that information and you was ready for us when you had it. Yes.
That's good times. Big fan of Mayor Rahm?
No, I'm not a big fan of Mayor Rahm.
All right, so there you are. Just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on in Chicago and or Illinois. And, of course, we'll keep you...
Yes, you know what's going on in Illinois and
I
Chicago.
got a feeling this is going to keep going on. And we'll keep you posted on those stories as today's program rolls along. We got a little time here until our guest, Miles Kampf-Lassin, joins us. So, in the meantime, let's check out the YouTube live stream chat. What do you say,
I
Ben?
love when you do the YouTube.
I know, he mentioned this after the show yesterday. Man, D, I love when you do the live chat.
I love the live chat, man. The guys are really cool.
All right, so first off here, Bruce did his typical multiple hands waving. So then right back at you. 5 hands or 6 hands waving back at you, Bruce. Now, for those who download, you missed out on it again. Ben sings the song of the day. Brianna weighed in. She says, "Who's killing a cat?" Oh, wait, that's Ben singing. Good time.
Wait, was she the one who said solo?
Yeah, she always makes fun of you for singing.
Oh, that was brilliant. That's solo. I've been using that one all the time.
Oh, all the time. She said it yesterday. What do you mean
all the time since yesterday. D, can you sing solo? Solo that we don't hear you? Okay. That was a good one, man.
Bruce weighed in as well. He's talking about your T-mails that you receive. He says, "I thought it was the Freedom Caucus / Freedom Party."
No, these emails are from the Tea Party. I'm looking again.
He's being sarcastic.
Yeah, the Tea Party. Oh, I get it. Yeah, Tea Party. Tea Party. Hold on. I pushed the wrong button. I mean, these phones, you know what I'm saying? They're hard. I pushed the wrong button.
Yeah, the life of Ben Joravsky and that iPhone 5. Show everybody your phone, Ben.
With the Bulls thing.
Oh,
hey, how about the Bulls? They won the other night, huh?
Hey, who cares? Okay. Brianna weighed in again. She says, "OMG, can't wait to hear what Elena Hampton has to say."
Yes, Elena Hampton. She'll be in the studio a little after 4. We'll do a bonus, so that'll drop. Dennis and I will have one of our famous post-production meetings.
Let's go for it now. Let's just have a show meeting. What do you say? Monday we drop it?
All right, wow, I love it. By the way, Miles is in the studio and he's wearing a Bulls T-shirt. All right, there we go.
All right, right on. That's an awesome shirt.
He feels it. Okay, Bulls were victorious last night, D.
All right, our good friend Steven weighed in. He said, J. Bro Pritzker.
J. Bro. J. Bro.
And finally here, Brianna weighed in again saying, "It was a light grilling."
Oh, a light grilling? She told him to rip up the DNA. Not DNA. What is it? Non-disclosure. I reversed it. There's that dyslexia, Miles, I've been telling you about. I never would have gotten through Whitney Young High School, Miles, with that dyslexia.
He's one of a kind, that Ben Joravsky.
One of a kind love affair.
Okay, sure. All right. Well, coming up after this short little break, our good friend Miles Kampf-Lassin is back, and he's going to be talking all things progressive politics with us. So don't go anywhere. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, and we are live from the Chicago Sun-Times. The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by Northwestern University's part-time master's program in literature and liberal studies. Students learn from dynamic and diverse faculty as they build advanced skills for critical analysis, writing, and research. Evening classes are held on Northwestern's Evanston and Chicago campuses. The spring quarter application deadline is January 15th. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/masters.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them: ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time: ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Kampf-Lassin in the studio from In These Times, a regular every Thursday on the show, talking all the political issues of the day. Miles, I got to bring back our debate from yesterday. We had Adolfo Mondragon in the studio with Monroe Anderson was in the studio as well. Doris Davenport came in. Rip-roaring debate. We never get tired of talking about Hillary, Bernie, and the lingering fight from 2016. I weighed in with a column. That it's online. It's on Facebook. I don't know if it's on our Facebook page. It's on my Facebook page. I wrote it for the Reader this week. Very irritated at Hillary Clinton for the comments she made about Bernie. Thought they were unfair. That she showed ingratitude for the work that Bernie did on her behalf after it took him a little while to get over the election, and I don't know why Hillary would be sitting so high and mighty on that issue. It took her a little while to get over the Obama election in 2008. Once he got over it, he was behind her 100%. The issue is the attitude of many, quote-unquote, Bernie bros who will never forgive and were very nasty toward Hillary Clinton and Hillary Clinton supporters. So Bernie sometimes gets blamed for the rhetoric of his Bernie bros. And as such, I have to read to you a text I got this morning from Heidi Henry, our good friend Heidi Henry. I hope you're listening, Heidi, one of the Heartland Mamas.
Co-host of the Heartland Mama podcast?
Yes, that Heidi Henry, a frequent guest on the Ben Joravsky Show.
It's a great podcast, people. You should listen to it.
Yes, what's it called again?
The Heartland Mamas.
Right, Heartland Mama. I think that's a great title, man, Heidi. You got it going there. Anyway, Heidi was talking about how she was driving. I'm going to read you this text as best I can. And Heidi explained to me that it's one of those things, Miles, where you don't type it, but you talk it. Yeah. And so it gets transcribed by some machine in Apple headquarters somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard. It's a little incoherent at times. But she goes, I don't know if you heard me when I was driving. I was yelling from Winfield, Illinois, but I yelled right on Monroe so loud. I'm sure you heard it in Chicago. That's pretty funny, Heidi. I would have voted for Jesse Jackson, too, when he ran, except that I knew that he was a dirty dog, just like Clinton. Heidi tells it like she feels. But he was the most compelling candidate that year. She says, as for the Bernie bros, Monroe is right. Point for point, I agree with Bernie, except that he is not a Democrat. That's my problem with him. Doris Davenport is right that Bernie bros are mean. I've lost more bro friends than Trump-supporting friends because their ideology is absolute. We have to remember that Clinton was not a bad candidate. She won the popular vote by more than 3 million. She's absolutely correct there. Bernie would not have had any better showing. The 2016 election was rigged, and we were not meant to win. We have to stop the circular firing squad, and we have to stop repeating the language that Russia inserted into the Sanders-Clinton primary. We keep repeating that stuff as if it's true. We know that it's Russian rhetoric. Thank you, Heidi Henry, for sending that text. I'm going to bring you back in a couple of weeks or so, and we'll take the deep dive with you in the studio.
And you can hear more riffs like that on the Heartland Mamas podcast.
What's the name of the podcast again?
Heartland Mamas.
That's what I wanted to hear. All right, so Miles, your response to that?
Well, I have heard this before. I think that's pretty frequent critique is that, Bernie Sanders is only as good of a candidate as the most extreme of his supporters. I take issue with that in general because I think that, you can't just have guilt by association across the board for any candidate and say, oh, this one person was mean to me online who supports one candidate, therefore, all of his supporters are unreasonable and purely ideological. I do wonder, though, I understand that the Democratic brand is very strong, certainly in Chicago, across Illinois. I wonder if that is more of a concern about somebody's personal ideology as she's critiquing there. Bernie Sanders not identifying as a Democrat being upset because there's not alignment there. Because I don't know why that would be a problem. I don't think that that's really a liability in an election when the goal is to win over independents and hopefully Republicans as well. You know, if you're thinking kind of gaming out the general election, you probably want a candidate who can appeal across the board and not just to people that already identify as Democrats. And what better person to do that than somebody who's been an independent their entire life in politics and that speaks up against both the Democratic and Republican establishments. I mean, that's, I think, the difference that Bernie Sanders offers, and I don't see that as, you know, a problem going into a general election. And for, you know, somebody to say I don't agree with this candidate because he's not a Democrat, that's fine. But I think for me, that's just as ideological as saying, you know, I only agree with Bernie. I'm not going to agree with anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a fair point. And when I look at where things are going in politics, it seems to be the trend that strong identity with a party is sort of vanishing. And let's just take a look at the Republican Party. The head of the Republican Party at the moment, the man who controls the Republican Party is lemmings that will follow him wherever he goes, even if it's off a cliff, of course, is President Donald John Trump. He was not a Republican most of his life. Who knows what he was. He dabbled with
No
both.
collusion.
Yeah, thank you, Donald. I forgot about that. He gave $50,000 to Rahm Emanuel. Yeah. You know, I'm sure he had an ulterior motive, like he wanted that sign on that building, and it worked. He got the sign on the building. He hired Ed Burke as his property tax lawyer. Ed Burke, of course, longtime Democratic committeeman here in the city of Chicago, and so he flirted with the Democratic Party when he wanted a tax break. So Donald John Trump has no strong ties to the Republican Party, and now he controls the Republican Party. He is the Republican Party. So I guess Bernie Sanders, I don't mean to say he's in any way like Donald Trump, but there's some parallels, if you follow what I'm saying.
Well, and also I think that what sets Bernie Sanders apart, I think, in this election is partially that he has been not just willing to stand up to the establishments, but he's taken positions that have pulled both parties in a very different direction. You know, take the issue of the Yemen war, for example. This is a war that is still ongoing. It's referred to as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world because of the amount of starvation and death amongst young children in the country of Yemen. It's a Saudi-led war, but it is being funded and fueled by the U.S., which is supporting all these arms trades to Saudi Arabia. Bernie Sanders, the Democratic establishment was not speaking out about this issue. It went on under Obama, and neither was the Republican establishment because it's going on under Donald Trump. Yet Sanders, with Mike Lee of Utah, was able to put together this bipartisan coalition and actually enact the War Powers Act, the first time it's ever been done. And I think the reason he was able to do that, and that people see that as actual political courage, is because he's not beholden to a particular party, and he's saying, look, this is what I believe in, this is what is just, and this is what we should be fighting for. At the same time, I mean, Bernie Sanders has been caucusing with the Democrats since he's been in Congress. It's not like he's been working to undo the Democratic agenda. He's been working to move it in a more progressive direction through fighting for things like universal health care and ambitious climate action. So I don't see that as it's not as if he's been subverting the party or something. And when it comes to you pointed out in this in your column, which was great, I think is there were far less Bernie supporters who went for Trump in the 2016 election than there were Hillary Clinton voters who went for John McCain in 2008. So this narrative that somehow Bernie Sanders supporters or Bernie bros are to blame for Trump's election just is not backed up by history or the facts. So I understand that is, a lot of people feel like the Bernie bro narrative is very real. I would just point out, look who's just been, endorsing and getting behind Bernie Sanders: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. These are strong women of color in Congress who believe that Bernie Sanders is the best representative of their vision for what they want to see the U.S. politics look like going forward. And he just got endorsed by the Center for Popular Democracy Action. This is a group that's a coalition of almost 50 progressive grassroots groups. It represents over 600,000 members. It's their first presidential endorsement in their entire 7-year history, and it's mainly made up of working class people. Mainly, these are people that are, women of color that make up the working class base. So it's not as if, these are all, I understand as somebody who is a white guy who's a young millennial, I'm not the best tribune of this information, but I do think that that's widely inaccurate portrayal is like all Bernie Sanders supporters are bros.
No, I wouldn't say all Bernie Sanders supporters are bros at all. First of all, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'm definitely not a bro. I'm too old to be a bro. I'm a ro, which is an old bro. But part of this is a reflection, I think, of just the social media era that we live in. So that drives the narrative as well. And there are a lot of nasty Bernie bros out there saying a lot of nasty things. There's a lot of misogyny out there. And in general, I thought there was a lot of hypocrisy out there with the added reaction that people had to Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton, he's the dirty dog. It wasn't Hillary Clinton. Now, you could say she enabled him by putting up with him all those years. But it was as though all the bad negative attitude that people had about Bill Clinton got dumped on Hillary Clinton. I don't know how fair that was. And so I remember feeling very strongly about this, Miles, when we were heading down in October toward the Hillary Clinton Donald Trump race. Just a lot of the attitude that I heard expressed from Bernie Sanders supporters, usually men, toward Hillary Clinton was borderline violent. So I had a lot of issues with that. That said, it's just so bizarre. Everything about this Hillary Clinton story, I can't really quite shake it. I didn't even know what happened last Friday.
I was going to say, the term you're looking for, by the way, is brold. You're very brold.
Oh, I'm brold.
You're a brold man.
I'm a brold man. But she was on the Howard Stern show. I don't know if you listened to Howard Stern back in the day. You're probably too young. But Howard Stern was one of the biggest misogynists out there. And it's like this. And listen, he was so happy that she was on his show. He was just, showering her. Thank you for being on the show. She didn't hold him. She didn't come out and say, well, Howard, there's a reason I wasn't on your show in the 90s. You would have probably asked me to take off my blouse or something like that.
There was audio of Trump on the Howard Stern show when he was running, right?
Yeah, and Donald Trump was a regular on the Howard Stern show in the 90s and the O's, and he used Howard Stern's massive platform to just promote himself and his brand and his name. And you could argue that it was people like Howard Stern and David Letterman and Jay Leno who gave Donald Trump that platform that resulted in Donald Trump being president. So it's kind of ironic, you hear me? That Howard Stern, of all people, would be the one turning to Hillary Clinton and saying, don't we hate Bernie because he didn't endorse you fast enough?
Yeah, but it did get him a lot of headlines. I mean, I think that that's the reason that he went that route and kept pushing her on it, is because he knew that she wanted to say something about that and still clearly feels spurned by that experience. That said, I mean, Bernie Sanders was recently on the Iowa Press show a few days ago, and they asked him specifically about that. And his response was, look, I have a letter from Hillary Clinton that says, thank you so much for working so hard to make me president. I mean, I understand that there is still a lot of resentment and anger, because that was the 2016 election, turned the world upside down for so many people that had believed in, a vision of politics for so long and thought things were going to go one way. And it's hard to explain how Donald Trump, this, sexist, racist villain could, become the president of the United States. And so there, must be some kind of conspiracy, or people were, working behind the scenes to make sure Hillary Clinton was not the president. But that can't be said about Bernie Sanders. He went to, 16 states. He did dozens of rallies, and that's it's just not backed up by history. It's also bizarre because Howard Stern said on I think Colbert, one of those late night shows, he said Bernie Sanders was his personal hero. So then to go on air and try to say, do we hate Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
It's clearly just trying to get headlines and get people to listen to his show more.
Well, it worked. You guys. I have to say, I was suckered in like everybody else.
Well, because these are big fault lines in American politics, and I think a lot of people are still, understandably, the feelings are very raw. I mean, it's only been a few years since this election, and it's hard to get over that and think, forward when you're still trying to relitigate the past. But I think we gotta focus. Hillary Clinton is not running for president. We have a slew of Democratic candidates right now that are running for the nomination, and it's becoming clearer and clearer who the top tier ones are and who are the most who are going to be the most effective at taking on Donald Trump.
All right. Well, we're going to get into the top tier ones in a little bit, but you said something that's really important, and I want to back up and concentrate on fault lines. And when I put aside just the side issues of who Howard Stern is and whether Bernie supported Hillary too late, et cetera, and so forth, or whether Hillary is inconsistent in her appraisal of Bernie, put that aside. I'm starting to wonder, and I put this in my column, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. Are we in a position where the centrist Democrats, if Bernie's the nominee, will not vote for Bernie? And I'm laughing. I'm going to ask Peter Cunningham when he's coming in. He's more of a centrist Democrat, obviously, than you are. But, pretty much my whole voting life, Miles, I've ended up voting for Democratic presidential candidates who are more to the center than I am. I think 1988, I voted for Jesse Jackson in the primary, and then Michael Dukakis was the presidential candidate, and I voted for him. He won because he won the primary. He was a Democrat. So I'm a loyal Democrat. I subscribe to the lesser of two evils strategy. That the worst Democrat is generally better than the best Republican. Do you think the shoe will be on the other foot? Do you think the centrists will do that? Or do you think they'll abandon the Democratic Party? The Rahms of the world will abandon the Democratic Party if Bernie Sanders is the nominee?
I don't think that many of them are even entertaining the possibility that he would be the nominee. And you heard that, in that Hillary Clinton statement on Howard Stern. She said, I hope that Bernie doesn't do this to whoever the nominee is, completely foreclosing on the possibility that he would actually win the nomination. But also there's a reason that, and this is something we should talk about, is that, the TV ad spends right now in the Democratic primary as of spending out to the 17th of December. Right now, Michael Bloomberg, who we know has just entered the race a few weeks ago, he has spent over $100 million, $100.6 million. Tom Steyer has spent $81.2 million. And the next highest is Bernie Sanders, but it's at $8.6 million. So you can see this incredible gap in terms of the spending. That's over 10 times of what the Bernie Sanders is spending as Michael Bloomberg, and he's only been running for a few weeks. This isn't coming from a place of I think I'm the best nominee to take on Donald Trump. This is coming from a place of we need to stop this leftward shift in the party, because Michael Bloomberg sees that as a safer investment than instituting something like a wealth tax, which both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are running on, which would not only tax income, which is something we're, familiar with, but actually place a tax on individuals' full wealth, which would be a, huge dent in their massive riches. And so an investment like this, spending some certain hundreds of millions of dollars of their personal wealth to stop a Bernie Sanders from becoming the nominee is a much safer investment. But it means that that's how corrupt our democracy has become when, billionaires are purchasing the organs of our democratic process. It's Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post. These are like the rich, this is oligarchy in action. It's the richest people in the country that are working to undermine what, democracy is supposed to be. The people that are supporting Bernie Sanders' campaign, of course, are mostly teachers. They're people that work at Walmart. These are the most working class base of any candidate, and that is being undermined by these massive billionaires trying to purchase the election process. So I don't know if Michael Bloomberg is going to support Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, but it really does not seem like he's interested in the vision of the Democratic Party that Bernie Sanders is presenting. And so I could very well see him working as hard as he can to make sure Bernie isn't president, whether he's the nominee or not.
Yeah, that's interesting. I finally saw a Bloomberg ad. I'm not I know he's been saturating the airwaves, and somehow or other I saw Bloomberg. I can't remember how I saw Bloomberg.
Well, Illinois, our primary isn't until March 17th. So if you're seeing a political ad right now, it's going to be Tom Steyer or Michael Bloomberg, because they're the ones that are massively, blanketing the airwaves.
Yeah, it may have been during a Bulls game. What else? What else do I watch? But it was an ad, and the thing I remember about it is that he was introducing himself to voters. It was one of those rollout, like, who am I? And one of the things he was championing was that he was a strong supporter of gun control, which is a very interesting issue to lead with. And obviously he feels it's his strongest issue. I happen to be a big believer in the need for more gun control. I think we've kind of insane with this, our love and worship of guns, and we see that every day. There's another shooting, what just went down in New Jersey, was frightening. What happens every weekend in the city of Chicago is frightening. But having said that, if you think strategically, if you want to win over the conventional wisdom, if you want to win over undecided voters or Trump voters, this may not be the best issue to lead with, and yet that's what Michael Bloomberg is leading with. Now, I would respect him if he would say, I'm going to take that same drive and energy I have for unpopular issues like gun control, or go up against these powerful interests like the NRA and gun control, but I'm going to do that for a fair wealth tax. You know what I mean? A fair system. But I don't see him taking the next step. It's as though it's like all the most least popular issues that the mainstream of the Democratic Party has for winning over Trump voters are the ones he's leading with, and he's ignoring the populist issues that probably could get a foothold in areas where Trump did well. So I don't even understand the strategy that Michael Bloomberg's following with all that money.
Well, I think the strategy is just to, try to make it so that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren aren't the nominees. And I think that's Mike Bloomberg might think that he would be a good nominee, but he has the highest disapproval ratings of any candidate right now in the race. So hard to see that. Ask anybody who, lived in New York while he was mayor, and I think that you'll hear some pretty harsh critiques. I mean, that's the reason de Blasio won largely in New York is because he ran against stop and frisk, which was the program that Bloomberg had carried out in New York, which was incredibly racist and proven to be, in terms of how it was executed by the NYPD. So I don't think that Bloomberg is himself a very captivating candidate. I don't think there's, that's why what's so fascinating to me is that his argument, and I know we've talked about this in terms of J.B. Pritzker here in Illinois, but his argument is, look, nobody is going to give me money. I'm going to use my own money and invest this, as if that is somehow a more democratic approach to politics, saying I'm going to buy this election rather than and his critique of Bernie Sanders is saying, oh, well, he's taking other people's money to advance his career, as if this is some, secret ploy by Bernie to become, richer and more powerful. That is, absurd on the face of it, I think, because obviously, if you don't have support, if you don't have grassroots support, if you're not exciting people, they're not going to donate to you. And so if you just say, oh, well, I'm going to, buy my own way through this, that's not a way to win votes. I mean, this is going to be the most pivotal election of our lifetimes. I think 2016 was in many ways, but look, we've got less than 10 years to stop the massive warming of the earth. We've got, the healthcare crisis that is ballooning. There's so many, we go on. And yet, Donald Trump is looking at another 4 years of presidency where he completely stacked the courts with his nominees, including the Supreme Court. And then Michael Bloomberg thinks he's going to be the candidate that's going to be able to win over him when you see the massive rallies and grassroots support for candidates like Sanders and Warren. So I don't think that it's out of his belief that he could actually become the nominee. I think it's much more, they're freaking out, because they see what's happening right now, and the race is tightening, as I mentioned before. and it's becoming clearer and clearer as, you see candidates like Harris drop out and Buttigieg getting roundly attacked rightly for, his private fundraisers and his history at this, management consulting firm, McKinsey and Company. It's, more and more people and Joe Biden's poll numbers are dropping. That's something people haven't talked about as much. They talk about Warren's numbers slipping, which is true, but Biden across all the early states, even Dan Pfeiffer, who, people might call a centrist Democrat, he is a co-host of the, Pod Save America, and of course was former Obama administration official. Worked on the campaign. He said recently, look, this is the candidate that is looking most likely now to sweep the early states is Bernie Sanders, and nobody's talking about it really.
Well, all right, we're going to take a break. We're come back. We're going to talk about the top tier candidates. We're going to talk a little Horowitz report. I think I'm the only one in the universe who's obsessed with this report, but I think lefties they should pay attention to this as well. And other issues today with Miles. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
No, Ben, no one read about that Horowitz thing. Hour number 2
Who cares?
of your Ben Joravsky show for Thursday, December 12th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions again for sponsoring this program. All these unions are great. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. And the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. We can't thank you unions enough for sponsoring this program. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky show for Thursday, December 12th is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2. Let's hold on a second. Okay, let's go. It is Thursday, December 12th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we still got In These Times writer Miles Kampf-Lassin in studio, and it's the return of Chicago political consultant. He brought a guitar. Ben calls him PC, and that does not stand for political consultant. No, it stands for Peter Cunningham. And now your host, boy, furthest thing from a political consultant. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Miles still in the studio. Peter Cunningham has joined us. Going to bring him on in a little while. He's brought his guitar. He's going to do a little singing for us and a lot of political discussion. I know what Peter, I was going to ask you about. It had to do with this $1.2 million settlement to a family of men who died in police custody. That's what I wanted to ask you about, talk about. When PC's in the studio, we talk a lot about policing and criminal justice issues. And this is a very interesting test case for the city council. So I remember I was talking to Peter Cunningham on the phone today, Dean. I was like, I can't remember what it is I want to ask him about. I just remember what it is. So I put that in your brain. We'll talk about that in a little while. Meanwhile, Miles is still in the studio. Miles Kampf-Lassin from In These Times. All right, Miles, you mentioned the top tier candidates in the Democratic primary as we head out of 2020. Who would you say those top tier candidates are?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. We've kind of settled down to Joe Biden, who's been fairly steady, although, as I just mentioned earlier, we have seen a drop in his poll numbers, especially in the early states. On his heels, if you look at the Mammoth poll or the Emerson polls, Bernie Sanders, and below that is Pete Buttigieg, usually in fourth place, and Elizabeth Warren in third. So I think that's basically where it's at. You have the difference is, Harris has now dropped out, so her votes are kind of spreading into between other candidates. And of course, you have the entrance of Mr. Bloomberg, and in some polls, he's ranking in 5%. Steyer, I think, was a 9 in one poll. So
nationwide or
nationwide. So this is you're seeing the effect of when you do a massive drop, like I just mentioned these numbers, $100 million on TV, you're going to see a poll bump. I mean, I think that's part of the reason Buttigieg has seen some success in Iowa, is because he's just focused. He's taking all this money from hedge fund managers, as we know, and he's been funneling it into ads in Iowa that have been blanketing the airwaves. So there is, a relationship between that. I think the difference is we don't really know until caucus day what's going to happen in Iowa. Iowa is obviously one state where it's very hard to predict because it really depends on, for one thing, first-time caucus goers. That's really what won it for Barack Obama in 2008 when he had that shock victory. And that's what Bernie Sanders is relying on. That's what his kind of path to victory in Iowa is. And the Des Moines Register had a really great piece on that, on kind of his sticky support that he's built up of people that are willing to spend hours in a caucus hall supporting him. I mean, that's what it requires.
Supporting who?
Supporting Bernie Sanders. So, and it's unclear if that'll be true for other candidates, because it really requires in these caucus states for you to spend a lot of time supporting your candidate. And so if you're not capable or willing to do that, it's much harder for you to be successful in that. So I think that's going to be a big challenge for a lot of these other candidates who are hoping to stay in the race, whether it's Cory Booker or Amy Klobuchar or other people. But I think right now, as you can see, I mean, and even in the upcoming debate, I think there's only been 7 or 8 candidates that have qualified. I think Yang just got in, but otherwise it's mainly settled. So I think that's really what the race has come down to right now. And I think that's why, and certainly, Deval Patrick entered, he's kind of fallen flat as soon as he got in there. So I think other candidates might try to jump in, but at this point, it's really difficult to imagine them. And Bloomberg has even said he's going to skip all those early states and he's just going to focus on Super Tuesday, which makes it sound kind of like a sabotage campaign more than anything else.
Well, I don't know who he's sabotaging. I know his votes aren't coming for Bernie, so it's a very bizarre campaign that Bloomberg is running. Haven't really quite figured it out yet. Now, Joe Biden. I'm fascinated with Joe Biden's campaign on many levels. As everybody knows, I have this lingering fondness for Joe Biden that's inexplicable. And it's just as a character, I guess I like him. I also like the fact that he knows how the game of politics is played. I'm pretty much against almost most of the stands he's taken down through the years. But nonetheless, the irrationality of me as a voter is on full display. That said, this guy in some ways is as flawed as Trump. I mean, I was talking earlier in the show before you got here about his son, this embarrassing child support case that the son is involved in. But the heart of the impeachment hearing on that the Democrats are running against Donald Trump is the fact that Donald Trump was trying to force the Ukrainian president to make a statement that they were investigating Joe Biden's son and his connections to Ukrainian energy company. Miles, it's just while this is unfolding, Biden is going to be getting as much bad press as Trump is getting.
Yeah.
And Biden, he's got this, the no malarkey bus. He's got bizarre behavior where he's threatening guys. But in the age of Trump, it seems as though, I don't know, you could argue that bad campaigns, flawed candidates, bag loads of bad baggage works.
I mean, I think the major difference between, obviously their politics are completely different, but Donald Trump ran a campaign against the establishment, against everybody, and it was very clear everybody was against him. I mean, that wasn't some conspiracy. Everybody was working to undermine Trump's campaign, and I think rightly, because they saw him not just as a threat to the Republic, which is being played out now through these impeachment hearings, but also a threat to working class people across the country, which is very true. Whether you looked at his new tipped worker rule, which is stealing money from tipped employees, whether it's the his work to bust unions across the country through his Department of Labor. There's so many ways in which Donald Trump has been a disaster for working class people, and I think people on the left certainly saw that and rallied to stop him. But even Republicans thought this guy is for one thing, he's going to lose most likely if he's our nominee, and he is representing a very different vision for the Republican Party than what even Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio had put forward. So they were all against him. Joe Biden, the party establishment, is, he's the face of it in so many ways. And he's running this is very unusual, but he's saying we need to go back, rather than we need a new direction for the country, we need to move forward. What his campaign, he's open about it. He says, no, we need to return to a time, when before Donald Trump, when we had civility, when things were, back to normal, basically the Obama days. And that's why he brings up Obama nonstop. Well, for so many people, they just have seen that, the politics weren't working for them then either. I mean, the wage growth has been stagnant for so many years. We have, healthcare keeps getting cut. I mean, of course, the ACA was helpful in some ways, especially in Medicaid expansion, but it still left tens of thousands of people without any healthcare coverage. And yet, what right now we're seeing is that people are trending towards candidates. If you look at both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's poll numbers together, it's very clear the Democratic electorate right now wants a change. So I think that's very different in terms of how their campaigns are being run. Trump was running as an anti-establishment candidate. Joe Biden is running as like the establishment candidate du jour. So I think that's going to be very clear. What you said about Hunter Biden, though, I think it's a huge liability for him in the general election. Trump's going to go after that, nonstop. For me, I have some sympathies for Hunter Biden. I think, he's had I think, he got a good deal when he was working at Burisma. Of course, he's making tons of money, but this is a guy who suffered through drug addiction, and he's had a lot of tragedy in his life and family. Is, the kind of the traditional fail son, ne'er-do-well, as you might say. Mm-hmm. That's like very clear, but that doesn't mean he's going to be off limits in a presidential campaign. That's going to be, you can only imagine the attack ads that are coming from the Republican Party.
What I was trying to get at, and I really wasn't conveying my thoughts as clearly as I should have, is that I don't know if it matters anymore. So many people have come into the studio to say, wait till see what Donald Trump does to Joe Biden in the debate. Let's see what those attack ads are against Joe. And I'm like, the worst things you could say about Hunter Biden, boy, do I keep wanting to call him Hunter Thompson, and I'm fighting that dyslexia night and day, Miles. But the worst things you could say about Hunter Biden could be applied to Donald Trump.
Well, and the Trump kids are off in Africa killing elephants and posing with their tails. I mean, that's a true sickness. If you want to see horrible people, look at the Trump sons.
Yeah, so I just think the bar is so low with Donald Trump, and that the all the rules are out the window. Mm-hmm. The public's been immunized to bad behavior, public bad behavior. Donald Trump was elected. Even the aftermath of the Grab the Women video. So I just think, I read, like I said, the Tea Party, they sent me that email talking about Hunter Biden's, the paternity suit, even though their president that they support was paying off women to be quiet about the affairs that he was having with them. So it's sort of like, who are you to say anything about Hunter Biden? So I'm thinking that all the things that are traditionally would work against Joe Biden in this particular election aren't that effective in the age
That might
of Trump.
be true, but I mean, look at the way that he responded when he was asked by a voter specifically about Hunter Biden, which is a completely understandable question to have. Certainly, reading any of the mainstream news of being like, "Hey, did your son, was he getting a good deal because you helped him get this job?" And Biden says you're a damn liar, challenges to push-up contest. And I keep saying, it's such disdain for the very people whose votes he's trying to win. I can't see that as like an effective way to respond to this scandal. I mean, it might be true that the attacks on him won't be so effective, but the way he's dealing with it is just showing complete disregard for any of these critiques and not coming up with any defense whatsoever, and instead just challenging people to push-up contests. I don't see that as like a way forward for a nominee in 2020.
Yeah, no, it is very bizarre behavior. It is indeed. But again, I'm not defending it. I'm just pointing out that things have changed. Donald Trump is always like threatening people, and they say you should take that guy out and beat him up and rough him up, and that's what I'm saying. It's like very Trump-like behavior where you just break the norm instead of saying to the person, like, I respect what you're saying, and the reality is that my son did nothing wrong. It's just like, yeah, you want to go, I'll go. Push-up. It wasn't even a fight. It was a push-up contest. Yeah. So it's very bizarre behavior, and it's like the age of bizarre behavior. And what the kind of candidate that Barack Obama was in 2008 doesn't seem to be working. All the candidates who are sort of emulating Barack Obama are not doing very well in this particular race. Yeah. So it's just like Donald Trump.
Well, I don't think it all comes down to tone, though. I mean, if that was true, yeah, you could just have somebody, you could have Howard Stern run as the Democrat or something, and he would be, freak people out and get people, excited and say all kinds of shocking things. That's not true. I think the number one thing the voters, their number one issue is healthcare, and who is trusted the most on healthcare in every poll by large margins is Bernie Sanders. I think that's the kind of those are the kind of metrics you should look at in terms of trying to predict who's going to be the best person to take on a candidate who is. We know what Trump is going to do. He's going to call. You're right. He's going to take. I mean, he's going to attack Bernie like he would attack anybody else. It's not that they're going to be insulated from these attacks. But if you're running on a very clear program and you have very moral values that people understand, and even if they don't initially agree with everything you're running on, they respect you and trust you. You're going to be in a way better position than if you're Joe Biden and you've been running on slashing pensions and slashing Social Security throughout your life. You've been, you've supported the Iraq War, you supported this bankruptcy bill, all stuff that's hurt the working class. I think it's gonna be a much harder case to make that you're gonna, be helpful to the very voters that turned to Trump in 2016 in a general election. So that's, I think, the more important than the style or the tone.
All right, I'm going to close with a reference to a story that I'm obsessed with, but I realize that many of my guests and maybe many of my listeners are not obsessed with, and that is Michael Horowitz's report. There was a hearing yesterday in Congress where he talked about he's the Justice Department Inspector General, and he did an investigation of the investigation, if you will, of the FBI and how they handled their request to get wiretapping permission on Carter Page and launch an investigation into any connection between Putin's operatives and Donald Trump's campaign. And it's a very interesting report, and it underscores many of the criticisms that lefties, my beloved lefties and civil libertarians in Cook County and in the city of Chicago have been raising for years, and that is just the vast advantage a prosecutor has when going to a secret grand jury to get an indictment against a defendant. What's that standard line? You can indict a ham sandwich. Everything is weighed against the defendant. The case could be shoddy. They could exaggerate whatever the defendant may have done wrong, ignore whatever evidence there are that undercuts their main arguments, and the judge will give them what they want. I've had Leonard Goodman's been on this show, who is Rod Blagojevich's lawyer, talking about the case that they manufactured against Rod Blagojevich as it being unfair. So I'm very sympathetic to the things that Horowitz says, but the way it's played out, Miles, it's so baffling. It's like all these Republicans are outraged. Where was that outrage? Where was that outrage when the FBI shot Fred Hampton while he was sleeping, or the Chicago police backed by FBI? Where's been that outrage after one abuse of civil liberties after another? I remember when Michael Dukakis ran for president in 1988, George Bush mocked him. He said he was a card-carrying member of the ACLU. And suddenly I got Republicans up there in Washington, waving the Horowitz report.
Well, and the massive surveillance of all kinds of left-wing groups across the country. I mean, this has been going on for years and decades, and it's ongoing right now. It's not as if this is something from, the past. This is, what we're dealing with right now. I think that it cracks some holes in all of the, worship of the FBI that unfortunately was going on soon after the 2016 election, that somehow thought that, after James Comey had, pointed out, we're going to reopen this investigation in Hillary Clinton days before the election, that because Trump hated Comey, therefore the FBI was going to somehow put him in check and be some, going to protect our democracy or our republic. I think it does throw that whole approach into question, and it shows the FBI is not, your friend. They're not the type of, this isn't an organization that is going to, it's not like the ACLU. It's not. It's meant to protect the current power structures, and you can call out all these issues, and it doesn't have to be a partisan affair.
Yeah, I'm going to take a deeper dive with this one. I think I'm bringing Leonard Goodman in the studio.
I think that's a great idea. He's a super smart guy. I do want to talk about one thing in terms of while this impeachment stuff is going on. I mean, you talked about this a little bit before, but Trump just signed this executive order the other day, and it's going to have a big impact most likely, and it's going to stifle free speech, and yet it's not getting tons of coverage because understandably the airwaves have been blanketed, and he's claiming that this is going to be show his solidarity with the Jewish people. This is an executive order that effectively lines up with the Israel lobby, and that it wants to criminalize all kinds of Palestine solidarity organizing, especially the type that exists on college campuses, by basically conflating any criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. And that's done through, the New York Times reported it as basically defining Judaism as a nationality. But what we should pay attention to is on Saturday, Trump gave this really wide. I mean, this is something that would be top headlines if Donald Trump was not the president. On Saturday, he went to this Florida conference of the Israeli American Council, which is a lobbying group, and he said, literally, these are his words: "A lot of you are in the real estate business, and there's largely Jewish audience, almost huge Jewish audience. You're brutal killers, not nice people at all. But you have to vote for me. You have no choice." That's, one of the most kind of sick anti-Semitic statements you can imagine. And yet he's claiming, I'm protecting the Jewish people by going forward with these executive orders. And I will say, there's people like Dima Khalidi at Palestine Legal right now here in Chicago who are speaking out against this. There's a lot of people that are trying to make this a bigger deal, but it's kind of getting covered over. And this is the kind of abuses that this president is taking that, people just aren't paying enough attention to.
All right. It's a shame we're bringing this up now, because I could go on and on about this particular issue for an hour. We got PC sitting on deck, but let me just say this about that. Donald Trump, if he's not an anti-Semite, he plays to the worst kinds of anti-Semites. And his strategy all along I think it's targeted towards states with high concentration of Jewish voters, is to try to peel Jewish voters away from the Democratic Party. Florida, he's thinking. Pennsylvania, he's thinking, to get that electoral college victory again. Any way he can, by playing to the worst fears that Jewish people might have about the left. And it's disgraceful, and particularly when he looks the other way at white nationalists marching through the streets of Virginia.
And he had, look, this is somebody who had Steve Bannon and Sebastian Gorka working. These are open white nationalists. And it comes right after this horrific attack in Jersey City on a kosher deli that was a clearly anti-Semitic attack. This is really
So there's some
stuff.
real problems we have in our country. And I've had this argument with young Tom McNamee, who is the editorial board chief.
Tommy Mac
for the Sun Times. this gets into a larger issue. I'd love to talk about this with Peter Cunningham because he used to work at the Department of Education. So think about what I'm about to say, Peter. This gets into a larger issue of free speech on college campuses.
Yeah. And that's a civil liberties issue.
Well, it's a civil liberties issue, and the right has made that has lumped the left. So this is so bizarre how this plays out, Peter. Follow me on this one, and Miles. So when the right says that Ann Coulter has a fundamental First Amendment free expression right to go to any college campus she wants and insult people for their weight, for how they look, for their gender, for their political affiliations, to make fun of them, to mock them, to malign them. She has, even if it offends them, the people who are offended are written off as snowflakes. But she has a First Amendment right, and if anybody protests her, they're
well, and doxing people too. I mean, calling people out as undocumented immigrants. I mean, that's what's going on here.
Flip the switch, and somebody gets on stage and rips Israel. Well, that's hurting people. That's anti-Semitism. You can't allow it. I have a lot of issues with the intolerance that college kids have toward Jews on the issue of Israel. I think a lot of them dress up. It's disguise their political leanings with anti-Semitism. I do believe that's a legitimate issue. But I don't see how you can pick and choose which issues are exempted from free expression and which are not. It's totally political. And this is my problem with the right. They don't have a principled stand on anything. They don't have a principled stand on civil liberties. They're for civil liberties when it means you can stick it to the FBI for investigating Donald John Trump, but they're cheering on. They're not for civil liberties when the Chicago police and the FBI crash into Fred Hampton's bedroom and gun him down, or when they're spying on mental health protesters on the south side of Chicago. That's right. So it's just like, it's really hard to have a reasonable, rational debate these days, Miles, because I don't feel anybody has any principles. Yeah. These are just tactics and tools that you use to win an argument. Like, I want to win an argument against Peter Cunningham. Mm-hmm. I'll throw something at him. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm with you on this one. Yeah. I do think that Donald Trump was to absolutely no good with that executive order. I agree with you 100%. Miles Kampf-Lassin from In These Times, thank you so much. Peter Cunningham is sitting very diligently on deck. We're going to bring him on, and we'll be right back after this.
The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by Northwestern University's part-time master's program in literature and liberal studies. Students learn from dynamic and diverse faculty as they build advanced skills for critical analysis, writing, and research. Evening classes are held on Northwestern's Evanston and Chicago campuses. The spring quarter application deadline is January 15th. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/masters.
Social workers, psychologists, counselors. We think that adequate services for special education.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Defeat the plan on its merits, so they're trying to jump it on the low road.
A yes vote by the legislature will put the fair tax on the ballot.
If the General Assembly gives the green light, we're all going to have a say at the polls next November.
Tell your representative.
Let's make our tax system fair.
We deserve a vote.
This is fair and necessary.
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right, it's made entirely out of butter, and it's a state fair tradition since at least 1922.
Hey everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Boy, he loves that piano player. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Peter Cunningham in the studio. We call him PC. He's got his guitar here, folks. We're going to do a lot of political talk. A lot of the questions, I had all these questions for Peter, and a lot of them are just the carryovers from the questions I had for Miles, having to do with the state of the Democratic the race for president, the Hillary-Bernie fault line, the impeachment hearings, the Horowitz, all these things I've been talking about are on my mind these days. The civility. Peter worked for Barack Obama in the education department. So Barack Obama carried himself with a certain decorum. It's totally out the window these days as I see it in politics. Want to get Peter's thoughts on that. Some local issues as well. He's very involved in the police reform movement. Get his thoughts on what went down to the city council yesterday. And he's going to play his guitar. Peter's got in a rock and roll band. He's the only centrist Democrat who knows how to play a bar chord. And he is, that's his claim to fame. And he's going to play guitar. I don't know if you guys have any requests. Kick him on the Facebook page. Maybe he'll honor them. He's the human jukebox. He can play any song. D, you got an update for me?
Absolutely, I do. My request to be Van Halen. Anything Van Halen, I'm for.
I don't know he's a Van Halen guy. I think he's more like a 60s, 70s guy.
Oh, okay. All right. So I won't ask him if he's more of a Hagar, David Lee Roth kind of guy.
I don't think he knows what you're talking about right now.
He knows what I'm talking about. Come on. Come on.
He's PC.
All right. We do have an update. It's a follow-up on the story about those 11 aldermen who opposed Mayor Lori Lightfoot's budget a while back. So, yes, it's time for another episode of Ben's favorite, my favorite, and I've heard around town that it's Peter Cunningham's favorite daily Chicago political soap opera. It's time for a mayor and her aldermen. A mayor and her aldermen. All right. Ben, you've been watching the show lately, right?
I've been watching it every day. Yeah, I love this show. Yeah.
The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times. And, of course, Fran the Woman Spielman. Mayor Lori Lightfoot on Thursday defiantly defended her decision to use money from her newly created Political Action Committee, it's also known as a PAC, to shame the 11 aldermen who dare to vote against her $11.6 billion budget by creating a website called ChicagoBudgetVotes.com and posting the alderman's name on the website. In case you weren't aware, yeah, the mayor did that. Alderman Raymond Lopez, Ben, of which ward?
15.
Oh, my God, he's a dork, guys. He was one of the 11 aldermen who opposed the budget. He has argued that the mayor's website belittles legitimate concerns about the shaky nature of the mayor's budget and, quote, shines the light, no pun intended there, I'm sure, by the alderman, shines the light on the true nature of her character. These are Ray Lopez's words, not mine. Being petty and vindictive, Raymond Lopez said. The mayor defended her action, asking, quote, since when is letting voters and residents know how aldermen voted bullying? That's just silly. We have an absolute right to make sure that people really understand who voted, why they voted, what they voted for. A lot of people cannot attend city council meetings. They may not have access to live streaming. We're providing an important service, and I stand by it. It's not about winning the vote. It's about making sure that people in this city have access to basic information about how their government functions. This is not a political exercise for me. This is about educating the public about what happened.
All right, well, I'm curious what Peter has to say about it. I'll start first. First of all, let me just give a shout out to Ray Lopez. He has emerged as something of a watchdog. Why he's done it, what motivates him, I don't know, and I really don't care. I do believe that there should be at least one or two people in the Chicago City Council under any mayor, Rahm Emanuel, Richard J. Daley, or Lori Lightfoot, who are willing to stand up and say, I disagree with this mayor. Here's the reasons why I disagree with this mayor. I feel that one of the weaknesses of Chicago is this notion that we all have to be on the same page, and that stifles creativity and dissent, which are very important, I think, in any democracy. That said, I think so much has been made of it. Look, the reality is that she took that vote, and she set up that website, and it's a very tilted way it's phrased. So, like, if you go to that website, you got to know that you're reading Lori propaganda. It says something along the lines of, I made the vote for truth, justice, and the American way by voting with Lori Lightfoot. And then you click on and you see how your alderman voted. And anybody who goes there has got to be able to realize that this is propaganda. Or it'll say, I voted against everything that's great in humanity when I voted against Lori Lightfoot's budget. And you click on and you see Ray Lopez voted no. So I think it's overkill on Lori's part, personally. I don't think it's going to really help her anyway, because I think most people could see through this. So that's my humble opinion in this. Young Peter Cunningham, what's your opinion?
Well, I think people who kind of run for office with sort of a white hat on, about they're going to change things and turn on the light and everything like that, and people are shocked when that turns out that they're politicians, that they do what politicians do. But everybody does that, okay? I mean, if you're going to win, and you're going to win again, and you're going to have the majority you need to govern, you got to play politics. Anybody who thinks not is, I think, being naive. I think people are a little surprised how serious she is. I have to say, full disclosure, my wife attended that PAC luncheon, so she actually helped fund this website.
What? How is that even legitimate? I mean, I appreciate you doing the full disclosure, but your wife has her own life. You know?
She does.
I mean, good God.
She was supporting Lori Lightfoot when I was working for Bill Daley.
Yeah, so in some ways, your wife has a lot more sense than you do, and your kids. But
by the way, speaking of my kids, today's my daughter's 30th birthday. 30 years ago today, I became a father. So just a shout out to her, Seema Cunningham. She's on tour with her band, but
otherwise she would be here in the studio playing with you.
Yeah, we were going to have her here today, but she's
maybe next
still
month.
On the road.
All right, and happy birthday, Seema. Great musician, Seema Cunningham. All right, so people were a little surprised that you run. This is a shock to people in the city of Chicago. They shouldn't be, but a campaign is one thing, and ruling the city or governing the city, whatever you want to call it, is something completely different.
Allegedly. Yeah, people used to separate governing and politics. I think they've crossed over. But I think it also feeds into a narrative that I think Lori should be careful of. Mayor Lightfoot, I should say. Sorry. She should be careful of. I think the way the Eddie Johnson story played out looked a little harsh. You can have an opinion about whether he deserved to be fired or whether she should have just let him go. Or either way, he's gone, and he went in a tough circumstance. And I think that she's just got to be a little careful that people don't see her as a little vengeful on stuff like this.
Well, we talked a lot about Eddie Johnson. I called it Eddie-gate last week when that story was breaking. And the full story obviously hasn't come out yet. The skeptic in me, Peter, I have to confess, had a little trouble believing the timeline that Mayor Lightfoot laid out. The way she presented it, she woke up one day and read this report from the Inspector General and realized that he had lied to her about 3 months after he had lied to her, and she immediately called a press conference to denounce him and fire him. I just have a little hard time believing that she just learned it then. I thought maybe the timing was a little selective. that there were some political games going on with that as well. What was your reaction?
Yeah, I just didn't like the way it went down. I think this guy came into the job at a very tough time for the city, right after the release of the Quan McDonald video, and where trust with the police and the community was at an all-time low. Morale in the department was at an all-time low. The year after that video came out, we had something like 760 murders, so the homicide rate spiked way up. One theory was that the police were just sort of afraid to, to really do their job because they didn't think that anybody was going to support them. And it was just a tough time. He came in, and I think he, I think he did a decent job given what he was asked to do. He didn't drive reform, but the mayor, Mayor Emanuel didn't push reform as hard as Lori. Mayor Lightfoot, again, Mayor Lightfoot claimed she would, and I think she's still got a lot to prove on that front as well. I mean, I'm hopeful. It's great that she put some money into the budget for violence prevention. That's an issue I work on. So again, full disclosure. But if we're really going to get this murder rate, we're closing in on 500 murders this year. So that's still too high. It's 3 times higher than Los Angeles. It's 6 times higher than New York on a per capita basis.
We talked about this the last time we were in your show. What would you think? What should be done, in your humble opinion, immediately to take steps to bring that down?
I think you just have to invest a lot more in the community. I think that, police can't do it alone, and I think you really need to empower a lot more people to be part of the solution. And right now, I think we're still underinvesting in those kind of community-based programs that give kids better alternatives, that intervene with kids at risk, that give them a chance for, a job. I mean, these guys have no shot. They have no chance. They struggled in school. The gang life came along. It was a chance for them to make a little money, put some money in their pocket that every 15-year-old in the world wants, right? Every 15-year-old wants a little money to buy stuff. And next thing you know, they're in the criminal justice system, and they don't have a chance, and they come out, and who's going to hire them? So why do we expect them to not go back to that world? And I think we just need to have a paradigm shift in the way we treat folks like that.
I agree, and that was one thing I was disappointed with Lori Lightfoot's budget. Not more money there wasn't enough money, I think, for mental health care, mental health facilities, and as the budget was being voted on, Peter, there was a case in the paper. I talked about it last week, where a mentally disabled person, mentally ill person, got into it. With a cop, spit at the cop. I don't know if you follow this. The cop took him down hard. And so now there's the issue of whether it was police brutality. But again, I've been talking about this for 8 years. Like, why are the police the first on the scene all the time, dealing with people who are having like breakdowns? And why doesn't the city have a different approach to dealing with people who are clearly not stable at that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that whole story as well. I mean, we had something like 27 shootings that weekend, and the question I had asked is, the guy was allegedly confronted for drinking in public. Why is that the highest and best use of our police officers? And if he was down on the South Side, communities that have a lot of violence and everything, and I wonder why do they confront this guy? Maybe he was behaving erratically, and as you say, shouldn't there be somebody else there to help him? So yeah, you got to invest in that, and she's taking a lot of heat. The mayor's taking a lot of heat for not investing enough in mental health, for not investing enough in violence prevention, for not investing enough in homelessness. And I think she's legitimately pushing back and saying, look, I inherited an $838 million deficit. And the fact is, I put money into some of the things I promised.
All right, now
so I give her some credit.
If you were Alderman Peter Cunningham, from the 51st Ward in the city of Chicago, would you have voted for the mayor's budget?
Sure.
Why do you say that?
Because I think she did a pretty good job. I mean, I would have liked to see more money for violence prevention, but again, I'm working on that issue. But no, I think she did a really good job. And I think that, I would have voted for it also if she raised taxes. I mean, I wouldn't have been against a small tax increase to help build out some of the things that she said she would do, whether it's violence prevention or mental health. She needed an extra $20 million, whatever it is. I think. Now, I know taxes are up. They're up a lot, especially in like North Side neighborhoods like mine. I'm in Logan Square. But yes, I would have voted for a budget.
So you wouldn't, do you think there's ever a time when you would have voted no against the mayor's budget?
Against any mayor or her?
Yeah. Well, this is her first budget, but any mayor?
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember all the budgets.
The question is usually put to me: would you ever vote yes for a budget?
Yeah.
And I generally say I just would vote no, just to let them know I'm breathing and I'm alive and I'm here. And of course, it's impossible to think of anybody like me who would ever get elected mayor in the first place. All right, this is a story that relates to this general theme we're talking about, Peter. It's in today's paper, Fran Spielman, in the Sun-Times. Alderman $1.2 million settlement to family of men who died in police custody is hush money, in quotes, for gangs. General Godinez died in police custody in July 2015 at the age of 24. Raymond Lopez, Dennis was just alluding to him, the alderman of the 15th Ward, Brighton Park, back of the yards. High crime areas have been struggling with a lot of violence, a lot of shootings, a lot of murders, and Ray Lopez has been very upfront about confronting gang members in his neighborhood, standing with police to try.
As he should be. But, so would I have voted for that?
Yeah.
Yes, I would have voted for that. I mean, I think this is a guy
The settlement.
Yes,
yeah.
this is a guy who died in police custody. Like, that much we know. It's not in dispute. We don't know exactly what he did. We heard there was cocaine involved. We don't know exactly what he did. We heard that he was resisting police. All part of the job that goes along with being a police officer. But what he did was he died in police custody. And so to say, in this case, I'm not going to vote for it is to say, I'm going to make a judgment that, in this case, killing this guy in police custody was okay. Now, maybe the autopsy found that he died from the cocaine overdose. I don't know. It didn't sound like it. It sounded like he died from...
The police had one of the police officers
stepped on him.
Had his foot on his neck.
Yeah. So, I thought we were trying to get past. Now this is 2015, so it's a few years ago. It's before the Laquan video came out, which is sort of when the world said, "Okay, we really have to start to reform the department." Now the incidents last weekend, where the guy threw the guy to the ground, made me think maybe they need to accelerate that work of reforming the police, because the rank and file still maybe haven't started to change. I mean, that was a really scary takedown. I'm surprised the guy was okay. He did have to go to a hospital.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately he's doing okay. But still, I would not want to make the judgment that in this case it's okay that he died in police custody. So yes, I would have voted for it.
It's a very tough.
And which is not to say that Lopez and others aren't making a good point. We need to clean up our streets. We have gang problems, and yes, we expect law enforcement to enforce the law. But I think we just need to start by having a standard of use of force that's very, progressive and cautious. I mean, use of force is supposed to be a last option. It's not supposed to be something they just do because you're insulted or you're annoyed or you're pissed or whatever. It's got to be the last option.
And in this particular case, one of the police officers had his foot on the neck. I think what rubs people the wrong way, and I think this is what Raylo was responding to, is the notion that somehow or other a gang member's family would profit from that person's lifestyle. And it just rubs him the wrong way that $1.2 million of taxpayers' money is going to this guy, or his family. The man is dead. And so I can understand what's motivating Ray Lopez. I agree with you that police have to change their tactics, or we're just going to perpetuate these same old problems that have been existing in Chicago since the last century.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair issue to consider. I mean, was it too much? I don't know. How do you put a price on the life of somebody? I don't know how to do that, and I don't know how they arrived at that number. I see all kinds of numbers. I see a guy spends his life in prison, he gets $40 million. The next guy spends his life in prison, he gets $1 million. I don't know how any of this stuff is calculated, and what was the Laquan case? Did they settle that for $5 million? Was it? I think something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know why Laquan was 5 and this was 1.2. I don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, and as the aldermen are pretty much told, I remember that this was an issue in the Laquan McDonald case. The aldermen are pretty much told by the lawyers for the city, this is purely a dollar and cents thing. And if you go to court, you could end up paying $40 million, We think this is a good deal at $5 million. So it's $35 million. The case disappears.
Right.
Let's just get rid of this case.
Right. I think it's a judgment from the lawyers that the chances of having a much bigger settlement are higher. Therefore, you do $5 million for Laquan McDonald and you do $1 million here. I mean, again, it's kind of amoral to think about how these calculations are made. But I suppose someone has to do it. I think we're at, about $500 million in the last couple of years of police settlements.
Yeah.
So it's real money.
Yeah, it's real money, and it adds up. All right, let's go back to one of the topics we were talking about with Miles. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. It had to do with the edict that the executive order that Donald Trump signed, having to do with the education department and how they deal with accusations of anti-Semitism on college campuses. And there would be punishment if the Trump administration feels as though the university was too tolerant of anti-Semitism. You worked in the education department.
Yeah, we never did anything like this. I mean, like everything Donald Trump does, from my point of view, it's not grounded in legalistics. It's not grounded in the law. It's not grounded in the proper role of the federal government. It's not consistent with anything he's done before. There's extreme hypocrisy, and the sort of prevailing dynamic that's really kind of shaken everybody is that outrage politics. It just never stops with Trump, but it's not working. Outrage politics isn't really working. We have a new reason to be outraged every single day, and it doesn't work. I mean, what I think we need to be reminding people of is that Trump's economics, the stuff he's really doing is actually really, really bad for the country. Giving $1 trillion tax cuts at a time when a lot of people are, not keeping up with healthcare costs is really bad for the country, really bad for the middle class. This is the one downside to impeachment. I think the Democrats had to impeach. They had to impeach, given what he did. But we're not talking about economic injustice, which at the end of the day is much more of a voting issue.
Well, before let's get to flesh out what you said. They had to impeach. Why do you say that?
Because I think what he did truly undermines the foundations of democracy. The idea that you could use public dollars as an inducement to get a foreign government to launch an investigation of your political opponent is, I think, literally shaking the foundations of what this country's about. Those are our dollars. You're using it to get a foreign country to investigate your political opponent.
Not even just announce they were investigating. We don't even know if they were investigating.
Like
just
everything
announce
Donald
it.
does, just announce it. That's all you need to do. I don't really care if there's any follow through.
Yeah, just announce it.
Right.
And then I'll tweet about it. Yeah.
Right. He announced the other day that we have the cleanest air and water ever. He just said it. This guy who gutted the EPA. He just announced that we have the cleanest air and water ever.
How did I miss that?
Yeah,
Let me celebrate by having a drink of water.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, the water's delicious and it's clean.
Yeah.
So it's just so blatant they couldn't ignore it.
Seems like it to me. I mean, I know what I read. I know what I hear and see every day. I listen to the testimony of these folks who I trust, who are serious people. Some of them are Republicans, some of them are Democrats. Most of them are, career service employees. And I met a lot of them when I worked in Washington, and I had great respect for them. They were smart people. They often said, one of them said to me once, look, you work for the president, we work for the Constitution. His point was that you guys come and go. We were what's called the political appointees. Mm-hmm. President of the United States has about 5,000 political appointees across all the agencies. I was one of them. In Department Ed, there were like 120 or something. I was one of them. Our job is policy, right? But their job is to enforce the law, carry out the law, and it's a slightly different job. We rely on them to execute some of the policies. But, this guy pointed out to me, a really, really great guy, that we answer to a higher power than the president.
Wow.
We answer to the Constitution.
And so
I trust those folks who came in. They testified, put their name out there, knowing that they'd be hammered and attacked by Republicans, attacked by Trump, And, what they said is this is unprecedented. We've never had anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so as best I can understand it, I'm not a constitutional expert, this is an abuse of power. I don't know what else to call it. And so to allow it to go forward, and I think there could be negative political consequences for Democrats. We flipped 40 Republican seats last time, I think, in, districts that Trump won. And broadly speaking, support for impeachment is only about 47 versus 45 against.
Yeah.
So in those red districts that are with Democratic Congress people, it's probably a majority are against impeachment. And these guys are going to have to take a vote on that. And my guess is Speaker Pelosi will allow some of them to vote, or at least not criticize them for voting against it.
No, you said it right the first time. She will allow them to do. You said it right the first time. Don't clean up what you said.
All right.
That is great. That's how a leader in Congress.
That's how you keep your majority.
Yes.
Which is a big part of the job.
Yes.
Because if you don't keep your majority, think of how powerless we'd be, but for Nancy Pelosi. She is, by the way, my hero at the moment.
You're loving Nancy Pelosi.
Oh my God, she is my hero. And I
Why do you say that?
Oh, she's just running a logical, sensible, politically smart, honest, hard-hitting counterpoint to Trump. And, at a time when so many other people are struggling to counter this guy, she's got it. She knows what she's doing, and she's boxing him in.
All right, so let me bring you in on one of the great debates that's going on my show. I bring everybody in, we ask them to say, how long should the Democrats allow this proceeding to continue? There are those who say, get it over with fast, so you get the vote down, so you're going to lose in the Senate. He's going to walk, and so therefore it won't be an issue in November so much so with those swing districts that you were just alluding to. And there are others who say, keep it going. Let's embarrass Trump.
No, I'm in the first camp. I think, I think that the narrow approach was the right approach. I understand that there's a lot of progressives who are upset about that. They wanted to throw with the kitchen sink at him. I think that this was the right approach. This is lock solid. This is, clearly a violation of his oath. At least it seems so to me. And I think they have the vote this week or next week, and they go home. And then the Republicans can do what they want to throw it out. It's their moment. It's their day. It goes to the Senate. There's no question Mitch McConnell is going to run that the way he wants to. And, that's just the reality of it. We don't have the power over there to acquit.
No, that's true. And by the way, full disclosure, since we're all doing I'm a string it out guy. But
you are. You think
totally.
we should just string it right up to Election Day?
Well, and yes. And I got something else for you. Believe it or not, I think Donald Trump agrees with me. And this is something that I've been watching. Jim Coogan, a shout out to you, or a lawyer who comes on the show all the time, who's sending me articles to this point. Donald Trump seems to think that it's in his best interest to have the show trial.
I know, his fundraising's up,
So I think he wants to string it out. And the articles that Jim has been sending me are very interesting, Peter, because there is a strategic difference between Mitch McConnell, who's more the line, believe it or you are, let's get this over with fast. It's a distraction. It's going to hurt when Mitch McConnell's thinking of all his senators who have to run for re-election in November. Let's get this over with now. And Trump is like, let's make it loud. Let's make it noisy. Let's counterattack. And so Trump, I think he likes it. So I'm starting to think this thing may have a life of its own in ways that I can't predict, Peter, that it may be easy for Nancy Pelosi to say, all right, let's get this over with fast, or Mitch McConnell say, let's get this over with fast. But there's forces out there that they don't control that may drag it on.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me like one of these stories that the Twitter world and the hyper-involved world is more into than the broader general public. I don't think the broader general public wakes up every day and says, what's the latest with impeachment? I do think they wake up every day and say, how's my job? And can I pay my bills? And how much, I don't have any money to send my kid to college. I think they say those things every day. And so I just think that that's what the Democratic candidates running for president should be talking about. I don't think, they're really not talking about impeachment that much. It's interesting. And they're the ones who are looking at polls every day.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And they're not talking about impeachment. They're talking about, bread and butter issues, and that's good. So I think the speaker understands that. and says, okay, we're going to do our job. I mean, on the same day, read all these articles yesterday about at 9 o'clock in the morning, they announced the articles of impeachment. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, they announced the new trade deal. So it's like, she's like trying to get the work done.
Yeah.
And I like that narrative. They've sent 250 bills over to Mitch McConnell. He hasn't acted on a single one of them. We're doing our job. This is what we were paid to do. And if you want more of this, elect Democrats. Give us the Senate. So,
to use your past arguments against yourself, I'm listening to you, what you're talking about. I remember I think the last time you were in the show, you said this on the air or off the air, probably on the air, that if Donald John Trump had been a conventional president and come in with an infrastructure bill with this economy, he'd be well on his way to re-election.
Absolutely. He'd be cutting ribbons all over the place.
Yeah, and it's the unconventionality of Donald Trump with this economy, because basically the economy is working for an incumbent president. If you were running a Democrat, if you were running Barack Obama's campaign right now, you'd be saying the
110 months of growth.
Yeah,
3.5% unemployment.
yeah, and so
stock market through the roof.
So when I hear that, I'm like, well, it seems like the advantage of the economy is to Donald Trump. The disadvantage to Donald Trump is his behavior. So let's accentuate as much as we can.
So don't make it about the economy.
Don't make it about Donald John Trump and how weird he is and how the wacky texts he puts out and how he's fighting absolutely everybody and how he was shaking down the president of Ukraine and how he's like intimidating witnesses and how he won't comply with subpoenas that Congress issues.
I think so, but then I go back to what I said before. It just seems like outrage isn't working. We're outraged every day, and it's like it's just not working. Now, I mean, now you could argue that his approval rating has been underwater. He's been around 40 almost his entire presidency. I think, except January 2017 for a day, he was at about 45 or so.
One day I remember that. He was so happy.
So explain that. If we have this economy and his approval rating is down so low, why is that? Is it, one theory I've heard is that more and more, especially white, working class women are just exhausted by him, just sick of the everyday battles. And they're swing voters. They went to him thinking the Democratic Party hadn't been good for them. Maybe some of them followed their husbands there. I don't know. Maybe some of them, a lot of them, are single moms. They're just voting. They bought some of his promises that he was somehow going to remember them at a time when maybe they felt the Democratic Party hadn't remembered them. But I think they're moving back. They're moving back in big numbers. They're seeing someone like Biden and say, this guy's always understood what we were about. And, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, they're all talking about economic issues.
All right, let's get to that before we take a break and bring you on with your guitar. Bernie Sanders and the centrists, once again, with Hillary Clinton's comments on the Howard Stern show last week, brought that old fight out in the open again from the 2016 fight. Do you think that's a problem for the Democrats, this rift between the left and the center?
I suppose it is. I mean, it's not a great thing. We're supposed to, at some point come together, and the argument she's making is we never really came back together after the primary. You sort of still hurt me. And, there was a third-party candidate, Jill Stein. And Jill Stein, I think by most analyses, took, more votes from Hillary. Took enough votes from Hillary that it cost her, the election in some states. But, Trump lost 3 times as many votes to the Libertarian candidate,
Gary Johnson.
Yeah, so third party, fourth party candidates, it's part of, it's a fact of life these days. And, I'm tired of Hillary finding one reason after another. It was James Comey, it was Jill Stein, it was, whatever. It was her. It was her mistakes. It was her campaign's mistakes. They did not stay focused on the Midwest, on the Rust Belt, and that's where they lost. So if anybody thinks there's another lesson in here, I think they're wrong. The lesson was stay focused on that base, get those Rust Belt voters out, and give them a reason to vote for you. That's what I believe.
Words I thought would never come out of my mouth. I agree with you, Peter Cunningham on
And
that.
words I never thought would come out of your mouth either.
I agree with you 100% on that one. Blaming everybody and everything other than the faulty strategy that ignored the three states that were absolutely key to the Democrats: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so just, stop talking about all this other stuff.
All right, I agree with that one 100%. PC sticks around long enough, I'm going to start agreeing with them. We're going to take a break. We're going to give Pete time to set up, get his guitar out, play a few songs for us when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Tony Preckwinkle, in a series of these forums and debates, I've counted some of your questioners have had to ask 4 or 5 times.
The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by Northwestern University's part-time master's program in literature and liberal studies. Students learn from dynamic and diverse faculty as they build advanced skills for critical analysis, writing, and research. Evening classes are held on Northwestern's Evanston and Chicago campuses. The spring quarter application deadline is January 15th. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/masters. Hey, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
Will do. Peter Cunningham in the studio, political strategist, political consultant, and we've been discussing all kinds of political issues of the day. He's also a singer, a guitar player, has his own band, and he comes in the show. I force him, I twist his arm. Next time he comes in, I'm going to ask him to bring one of his kids, because his kids are accomplished musicians in their own right, very talented. We'll have the whole Cunningham family. Be like the Von Trapp family, only to be the Cunningham family. Von Trapp is an allusion to something that none of our millennials know. Dee, do you have an update before I go back to Peter?
I think our listening audience is ready to hear PC let it rip on that guitar. We had one request, Rage Against the Machine.
Yes, Rage Against the Machine. PC says next time he's going to learn that, and he's going to play it when he's here in the studio. All right, before you get started, give folks, you have a concert coming up. Tell folks about it.
Yeah, so I have a band called Bread and Butter Band. My musical tastes and my political tastes are pretty closely aligned there. And we have a gig at a place called The Hungry Brain. It's on Belmont, right near Western, and it's a week from tomorrow. So Friday the 20th starts at 9 o'clock. And if you like classic rock and blues, come on out for a little holiday fun. So anyway,
What's the name of the bar again?
The Hungry Brain.
Brain, B-R-A-I-N.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, it's a great club. They do a lot of jazz there also, but they let us in once in a while. So,
all right.
So this is a song I wrote years and years ago. I've been inspired by lots of different songwriters. Bruce Springsteen, Neil Young, Richard Thompson, and then Bob Dylan, of course. And this is kind of like my Bob Dylan song. It's called "I'm Just Like You." Well, I won't hold you down, my friend. I won't hold you back. I won't try to rob you blind, get you hooked on crack. I only want to hold you, whisper in your ear. It don't mean I'm lonely, it don't mean I'm queer. It's just my way of saying, babe, had your troubles too. Maybe you don't know it yet, baby, I'm just like you. Well, I ain't no one special, and I wouldn't be if I could. I'd rather be a lumberjack in the forest chopping wood. You won't find my face in pictures or my name in magazines. You won't see me on the TV selling designer jeans. I'm every man, I'm no one, I'm anonymous, it's true. If you hold the light up to my face, you'll see I'm just like you. From
man of the people, you know. I've been burned by sidewalk pushers, I've been stung by men of war, handcuffed by a southern cop, tried by jailhouse law. I've been held up, shot up, hung out, strung out, ridiculed and spit on, drawn and quartered in the mind of a judge who claims to sit on the exalted bench of justice, where he keeps his robe and scales, and he sleeps all through the night on a king-size bed of nails. I'm just like you, I'm just like you, I suffered and I sinned. I'll only hang around long enough till my sails fill up with wind. I ain't got no answers, I got a message for your mom. Tell her I'd like to meet her soon, don't bring along your pa. We'll have a good time, chasing rainbows when we're blue. I know we'll get along just fine, baby, I'm just like you.
That was straight out of Bob Dylan. Oh my God! Even the thing about the lumberjack chopping wood, that's something Dylan would say. Even though I don't think Bob Dylan's ever touched an axe or anything.
Oh no, I had a job in the Great North Woods, working as a cook for a spell.
Yeah,
and I was in Tangled Up in Blue.
Very good. Wow, yeah. Then the axe fell, and then I had to go down to New Orleans and work on a shrimp boat or something like that. That's very good. I'm just like you. What's the second? We're gonna do a second song, weren't you?
I can if you want.
Yeah, come
you
on,
want to hear
man.
another one?
Yeah,
Putting PC to work.
Yeah, man, come on. He's got
All
the
right.
ties, wearing a tie and everything.
All right. Well, this song is another song I wrote. It was inspired by my honeymoon, which was down in a place called Belize in 1990, and there was this bar down there called the Sandbar, and we used to go down to the Sandbar every evening. We were staying in a little shack on the beach, and in the Sandbar were all these like old hippies. This is like 1990, and these folks looked like they kind of left Woodstock, and they just immediately got in a boat from Woodstock and went straight to Belize and hadn't been heard from since, and there they were. So it's called Belize. At the sandbar, he's waiting, keeping time with his drum, waiting for another victim who will treat him to a rum. And he talks like he's crazy, he got something new to say. He will promise you the world and more if you will help him through the day. Luscious Lena, she's laughing as she offers you a toke, and she doesn't seem to worry. No one else gets her joke. She ain't one to be low down. She's got $1 million heart. She's known happiness and sadness. She can't tell them apart. It's been raining for a week now. All the boats have gone away, and the locals quit complaining. They've run out of things to say, except the man with the drum in his hand. Luscious Lena and the staff, you can find them at the Sandbar every night. They're always good for a laugh. They're always good for a laugh.
All right, PC. Luscious Lena at the Sandbar. Always good for a laugh. Very good. Remembering the details of the people he met back in Belize in 1990. Long time you've been married, Peter.
Yeah, man.
Good stuff. The young man, Peter, will be performing one more time, December 20th. I wrote this down, but now I can't remember. Friday, December 20th at the Hungry Brain Bread and Butter Band is the name of his band. You'll be doing covers as well as your originals, correct?
Yeah, we do mostly covers. We just do classic rock stuff, a lot of blues, and then we sneak in a few originals just for fun.
All right, now
try to get people to dance and have fun.
I will close with this. You made a reference to a toke and a joke in that last song, and a toke obviously is a toke of some reefers, some marijuana, and this exposes more about me than anyone else in the world, what I'm about to say. For years, I was crusading for the legalization of marijuana. Now that it's legal, I'm like mad at everything, the way they're doing it, and all the rich guys getting all the money, and it's, the poor people getting frozen out of it. It's everything that's wrong with America today, Peter Cunningham.
Right. I actually was approached by an African-American lawyer who's bidding on licenses, who was looking for owners. And I hooked him up with some people I know who maybe could find people from the neighborhoods who might want to work in that. So I think it's important. The Tribune story wrote about the first round of licenses, not a single person of color among them. So it's a problem. And, if it's a real industry and it's going to make money, we've got to make sure people have opportunities to participate.
Absolutely. But isn't that just the way it goes in this world, man?
Yes, it always goes like this.
I mean, God dang.
And it's always like afterwards. Like they just announced they're getting rid of merit promotions. So remember why merit promotions were started in the police department?
Yes.
They were started to achieve diversity because we couldn't get diversity through the normal processes.
Yeah,
so
the tests were rigged.
Yeah, so then they started merit promotions and they were rigged. So what's the answer?
Yeah, what is the answer?
I think that, you have to have merit promotions and they got to be, they have to meet certain standards and you got to have an idea of what merit means and you got to define it and you got to prove it up and stop doing it the wrong way, which is to just hire your friends and promote your friends. That's what they do.
And don't you think there's a greater value? What I'm about to say is so antediluvian. It's so 60s. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. But don't you think there's a greater value to the city of Chicago to have an integrated police department? That you could do everything you can to make sure that the cops, blacks and whites, are working together on the police force?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and for whatever reason, the old system led to this. And then the new system leads to something else that's bad. It's one of the realities about public policy. Every public policy has a potential downside and a potential upside. And you're fundamentally relying on people to do the right things. And so
where do you think it's going to head with this particular issue, the merit hiring issue? Where do you think it's going to head? How it's going to head?
I feel like it's just going to repeat the same cycle. Like for some reason or other, people of color aren't going to get promoted, and then they'll turn around and say, okay, well, we have to do something about that. And you have it in every field. You have it in teaching. I mean, 80-something% of teachers are white. I mean, almost all of them are female. 75% of them are female. And over 50% of the students are students of color.
Wait, time out. Is this in the city of Chicago or nationwide?
Nationwide. But it's a problem in Chicago, too. It's disproportionately white compared to the student population. And, most studies show that having teachers of color work with kids of color, having at least exposure is a good idea. I met a black male teacher years ago who was trained to teach like 8th grade in high school. And a principal hired him and said, I'm going to put you in kindergarten. And the guy said, why? And he says, because I want those kids to see the black teacher when they're 6 years old, not to wait until they're 14 before they finally see a black male teacher. It was an interesting story, right? That this principal said, it's more important for me that my kids see a black male teacher young, even though they may not get another one till 8th grade.
Yeah.
But at least they had one early on, as opposed to thinking there's no such thing as a black male teacher.
Well, I could echo that story. When I was in 6th grade, I had a black male teacher. Until I got to 6th grade, I'd never met any black people. I grew up in Rhode Island, and it was just all white people. And my family moved to Evanston, and suddenly I saw black people and Jews. It was like, wow, my world changed.
Yeah.
But my 6th grade teacher was a black man, and it's one of the most profound impacts that on my life.
I'm sure it was. And I think imagine being a black kid who never sees one.
Yeah.
Right? And it's true all over the place.
Well, the other,
listen, and it's not to say that white teachers can't teach black kids. It's not to say that at all. It's just to say that we have to work harder to be diverse. And diversity to me is an important goal in the police department. And they got to figure out how to do it because they're trying to build trust with the community. And, every time you see a police incident and you see a black person who was abused in some way or other and you see 5 white cops, you think, okay, maybe if there was a black cop, at least one of them, who knows? Maybe I don't know. Maybe you'd have a different outcome. Maybe not. But you just gotta succeed at this. It's just too important. And then going back to the issue of marijuana, there have just been so many situations where the economics have conspired against people of color to keep them out. The housing laws that blocked all that wealth building. And so, what are we going to do about it? It's either we do something or we just keep talking about it, which is what we mostly do.
Yeah, we mostly talk about I really think we should do something. You know what? Make it illegal and go back and redo it. This is where I've been at. But no more arrests. I always go, illegal with that asterisk. No arrest. Don't arrest anybody for smoking reefer because everybody's doing it. We all know it. And some people get arrested, others don't. Peter Cunningham, thank you so much for coming in one more time. Friday, December 20th at the Hungry Brain on Belmont Avenue in Chicago. Peter, at 8 o'clock, did you say?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, my bad. The Bread and Butter Band will be playing. He'll be taking requests then. He'll study and get his Rage Against the Machine going, right, D?
There you go, yeah.
And he'll be ready to go. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. We'll bring you back in January to have more political talk. How about that?
Sounds like fun. Always fun.
All right, that's Peter P.C. Cunningham. I also want to thank Miles Kampf-Lassin for being on the show earlier today. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And as Peter Cunningham can tell you, back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites. And wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Apple, Google Play, Spotify, all of them, all right? Downloaders, we live stream this program Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, but mainly the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. Join us. Join the chat room. Shout out to everyone who weighed in on the chat room today. Great conversation. We'll see you tomorrow.